Welcome back. Let's talk about how to eat. When it comes to eating, timing is everything. You want to provide time for proper digestion while eating. Let's talk about the path that food takes through your body. It starts with your mouth and chewing, initially breaking down the food, but chewing also signals your salivary glands to start producing saliva. And that contains enzymes that help you to break down food. And then, of course, you swallow it and it goes down your esophagus, which has two sets of muscles that push food down, similar to how a snake moves. And then it hits your stomach. There's muscular openings at the top and bottom of your stomach where it tries to get to a certain level of acidity. And it might surprise you to learn it controls that in part by taking water either in from your meal or from the bloodstream. And so it's perfectly okay to drink water. And in fact, it's a good idea to drink water while you're eating. And then it goes from there into your small intestine and finally to your liver, which basically is the chemical factory of your body. And it turns things into the substances your body actually needs. It gets rid of the toxic stuff or things that aren't so good for it. And then finally it goes into the bloodstream. That's quite a path, isn't it? And once it's in the bloodstream, it gets detected by the brain. And that's what actually takes the time in the cycle. So if you're eating, your stomach may feel full just 5 minutes after a quick meal, but a lot of people can't really detect that right when they're starting to get awareness of their eating habits, right? The satisfied feeling actually won't even begin to come until nutrients hit the bloodstream, which is about 10 minutes in. Food entering the bloodstream is going to reach the hypothalamus, which is going to turn off the hunger signals. That takes approximately 20 minutes. So you've probably heard that notion of, it takes 20 minutes before your body starts to feel full. That's why. That's the pathway. That's what has to happen inside you in order for you to get that signaling back from your brain saying, okay, bloodstream is looking good. We're getting some good blood sugar in here. Let's go ahead and start, winding down and wrapping up eating. Now, of course, most of us eat too fast, right? And so it's like a race in those first 20 minutes to get as much as we possibly can get in there, right? Which is definitely not ideal. Now, you can eat faster when you learn to recognize fullness in your stomach rather than your bloodstream, but don't count on being able to do that right away. These types of signals, they take some getting used to really sort of distinguish the real ones, which are often the most subtle ones. The main mistake people eat is just eating too fast, so that they've already overeaten by the time 20 minutes starts to come around and elapse. And so the key thing to do to really eat properly is to actually just do what you can to slow things down. Otherwise, you're going to get too much in there before your body can tell you, hey, I've had enough, and it's already got too much. So let's look at some strategies for that. The first thing that you can do is drink water about 10 minutes before a meal, because that'll actually help to start the whole clock a little bit early. Something even more clever than water that you can do 10 to 20 minutes before eating is drink a few ounces of something sugary, whether a juice or some sort of soda or whatever else. I know this may be the only weight loss program that you've ever heard where someone is saying, have some soda, right? But even just a few ounces of that 10 to 20 minutes before eating, what is it? It puts the sugar into your bloodstream. It gets the hypothalamus. It starts signaling it within a more reasonable time period, hey, stop eating here or start slowing down your eating. And that's really helpful because most of us, when we start a program like this, we're just eating too fast and we've already got too much in by the time that signaling even occurs. Stop when the stomach feels politely full. That's a great way to think about it. It's politely full. Now, that's going to take some learning on your part probably, because for most of us, we've trained ourselves to have kind of an overwhelming feeling in our stomach of fullness. We might think that that's politely full. Well, I can feel it. It's full. I don't need to eat anymore. But really, that's probably you've already overeaten by that point. There's a much more subtle signal around the stomach being politely full that you'll learn as you bring awareness to your eating. So again, you can just simply slow down while eating, but there's some other tips that you can have, right? So one thing that you can do is you can cut the portions on your plate by 1/3 or 1/2 up front and box up the rest of it right away so it's not sitting there so that you're tempted to eat it. Lots of people these days cut their portions in half or cut 1/3 out of their portion, but then they leave it there on their plate, sort of taunting them. And, sometimes that makes it really easy to eat. So, get a box early on and just box that stuff up, set it aside, get it out of there. Savor each bite. Right? Starting especially with the very first one. That's when your taste buds, your sense of smell, everything is at its maximum. So it'll be the most enjoyable bite. Start eating right by savoring that first bite and then the next one and then the one after that and the one after that. One thing that the savoring allows you to do is start to detect when your taste buds die off, when food simply doesn't taste as good as it did, or when it doesn't smell as good as when it did. And those are all signals that your body uses to let you know that it doesn't need anymore. Put utensils down between bites, right? That's a great way to slow things down. Turn your fork upside down when eating. Rather than using it like a spoon where you're scooping stuff up, make it so that you have to actually poke things and pick them up. That actually slows down eating quite a bit. A really great thing that you can do is sip water between bites. That adds to the volume in your stomach, but it also slows down the eating process. And so it's win-win. And your stomach does need water as part of the digestion process. If it doesn't get it from you, it's going to take it from the bloodstream. Eat your most favorite parts of the meal first. So start by rating everything on your plate. Okay, that's a 10, that's a 9, whatever, or that's an A, that's a B, however you want to do it, right? And then eat the best stuff first and leave some least favorite stuff uneaten. In other words, always get in the habit of leaving something uneaten on your plate. Needless to say, if you're eating your favorite stuff first, it's, less likely that you're going to be stuffing yourself towards the end, whereas most people leave the favorite things until last, right? And then what happens? Well, even if they're full, they're like, I can't leave my favorite parts, right? Can't leave my favorite parts of this meal, so I'm just going to stuff it in there. That's terrible because by then it doesn't taste as good. Your taste buds are less responsive because your body's signaling, for you to stop eating. It doesn't have the rich aroma. Your sense of smell is also declining and so on, right? So maximize it up front. Just really enjoy the meal right from the start with your favorite parts and just always try to leave something uneaten on your plate. Get in that habit so that you're giving yourself permission to do it, because many people don't have permission to do it. They grew up with their mother saying, clean that plate, eat everything on your plate, and it's a terribly ingrained habit in there, which they don't need to do and often causes them to overeat, especially in a restaurant where they're often serving you way more food than you need. Pause in the middle of your meal. Just in the middle of the meal somewhere, let's say you're 10 minutes in, just stop for a minute or two. That's a minute or two on the clock that really matters. Take time to enjoy the company of others you're eating with, maybe while you're taking that 1 or 2 minute pause, right? So strategically think of something that you could add to the conversation or something that you could share, something like that. Use smaller plates, right? If you have a bigger plate, you're probably going to put more food on it. So use smaller plates. And that works also in many restaurant settings where there's often a smaller bread plate or something like that, and you can take a portion of your food, put it on that, and that's the portion you eat, and you take the rest with you. Cut up food so that it looks like there's more than there is. When you get your food right away, cut it up. That spreads it out more over the plate, and even if you're doing the thing, for instance, where you're put half your food, it's boxed up, you've got half your food left, now your plate might look pretty empty, right? Well, cut it all up, the rest of the stuff, and it'll spread it out on the plate. Take smaller bites, pretty self-explanatory one there. One that most people don't think about is have a less stressful eating environment. Oftentimes people eat in an environment that is somewhat stressful. And when they do, that's problematic because it leads to stress eating, which leads to eating more And you don't even think about the impact of your environment. Your environment that you're eating in is actually really important. So along those lines, you also don't want to multitask. You don't want to watch TV, talk on the phone. You want to bring awareness to the eating process. Now, obviously, eating can be very social. So you might be multitasking in that way, and that's fine. But just try to pay as much attention and bring as much mindfulness, really, as you can to your eating. When you're done, cover any uneaten food that you won't be taking home with your napkin. Get it out of sight or give it to the waitress or waiter. You know, get it out of sight, get it out of reach. Don't have it constantly sitting there because you're probably going to wind up taking another bite or two, even if you don't want it. And along those lines, when you're done, as soon as possible, get your leftovers wrapped up. So if you are going to be taking some stuff home and you're not going to be covering it up or giving it to the waiter or waitress or something like that, right? Get that leftover box or bag or whatever it is as soon as you possibly can. Don't wait until the end of the meal, as is the common practice in many countries. And finally, be as mindful as you can while you're eating and see what arises as you eat, right? So this can be a little tricky if you're eating with others and you really need to be socially engaged and paying attention to what people are talking about and stuff like that. But for those times when you're not, really just pay attention during the eating process. You know, see what's going on and really just savor and enjoy every bite. Okay, so these are great tips. If you search the web, there's all kinds of other ones out there. We've just collected our favorites here. And all of these are designed to really sort of help you to eat less, to slow down while you're eating, to not take accidental bites after you're done, you know, things like that, just to solve the basic problems. Believe it or not, if you just do these things, it will have a massive impact on your eating and thus your weight loss. All right, I'll see you next time.